Welcome to another episode of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together later about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. The theme of this season is Back to Business. The past couple of seasons have involved deep dives on horror history, and this time around we're taking it easy with all of that, and instead focusing on talking about what is most interesting to us in each of the movies that we watch. So kick back, relax, and enjoy it with us. This episode, I assume, is going to come out after Halloween, but we watched the movie before Halloween, and This was just pretty much a perfect one for that. Had you seen this movie before or even heard of it?
So I hadn't seen it, but I hadn't ever watched it before, but I did see, like, I've seen the picture, like, being recommended to watch, and I just never selected it. So I knew I was aware of it. But not sure why I didn't watch it. What about you?
I had never even heard of it before this year. And it had shown up a lot on the horror subreddit, I think just because we were coming up on Halloween, and so people were looking for very, like, Halloween movies to watch. And this definitely isn't part of some, like, big franchise, and it didn't seem like it was super well known at the time when it was new, but it really does feel just kind of like a love letter to Halloween and horror movies. And the movie's called Trick or Treat, matey, and it's basically just a bunch of, like, kind of short films that are tied together in a larger movie narrative, almost a little bit like All Hallows Eve, but bigger in scale. And I thought that it was all just, like, very much made by people who had like a bunch of good ideas for, like, a Halloween themed horror movie, and then they just kind of wove them together. But the thing that I kept coming back to through this whole movie, that I've just been waiting patiently to ask you this whole time ever since I watched it, do you think this was like anthology horror?
Yeah, I struggle with that question myself, and I'm glad you asked that, because just serendipitously, that's a word. Oh no, after we watched All Hallows Eve, so I guess it's not serendipity. After we watched All Hallows Eve, I was like, I want to watch another anthology horror film. And so I just kind of started going, like, I just started watching some random ones, like Creepshow. Yeah. I actually thought I'd watch this one when you told me. Definitely did not. But anyway, so I was, like, going on, like up to when you told me, I was watching those pretty frequently. Was Castle Freak one? Slumber? I'll have to find the ones I did. It's been a minute now. We recorded this one late because I had work problems. Anyways, I do think it is, but I think it's one of the more intriguing anthologies because it ties into each other from scenes throughout the movie.
Yeah.
To the very end. So I do. What's your thoughts on it?
I can't convince myself one way or the other, because I've seen lots of, like, independent films that kind of do that weird directorial style where you've got a bunch of different stories happening and they all, like, somewhat intersect with each other, but don't really all lead to any sort of, like, single cohesive story or anything. And so I definitely feel like this felt more cohesive than, say, VHS. But it felt less so than, I guess, for example, All Hallows Eve, where you had kind of like the main characters who were just sort of like progressing linearly in time, and then they would stop to, like, observe this other story. So I don't know, like, I almost feel like calling it an anthology horror would sell it short a little bit for how creative it worked all the stuff together into, like, a single overarching story that was taking place at the same time amongst different people in the same location.
Yeah, it was strange for me so it was weird for me because I was initially when I was watching, I was like, oh, this is another anthology just from like the quick scenes at the beginning. And then I was like, wait, this is still the same story. Is this still, oh, this is still the same story that's happening. So like at that point, I'm like, wait, is this just, standard movie or whatever? And then the ending tying it all together, I was like, I don't even know. I don't know if anyone caught that, but I just censored myself. I was going to say the F word because my son's repeating me now. So that's not for you guys. Anyways, I'm pretty fucking mad about it. So I was kind of confused though at the end of it because I was like, it was like the twist that M. Night Shyamalan wants to get you with. Like this one had a few of them better than some of his movies, in my opinion, because it was like, holy shit, like I did not expect, half of the things that you run into at the end of the film to take place, and then somehow it took place before the beginning scene. Like it would just kind of mess with your brain a little bit. So I thought it was. I'll still say I think it is. However, even if it's not, still watch it. It's that easy. Yeah. I was watching Tales of Halloween, which was the one I thought this was when you recommended it. But Prime had like a bunch of anthology horror not too long ago.
Yeah, and I feel like anthology horror has been really popular over the last 20 years or so. And maybe it's just because you can do it on a relatively low budget, not having to maintain like the full, end-to-end movie. But
I wondered that, or I'm sorry to cut you off. I wondered that, or if we're going to start seeing more movies like this because of, people not being able to pay attention anymore. I often complain about long movies, even though I'll watch a 5-hour Western. But, I wonder if that's going to be the case. And if so, I get dibs to nickname this type of genre the next genre, and we'll call it the TikTok horror genre. Because TikTok's ruined everyone's attention span.
Yeah, I think that's very plausible.
Thank you.
Yeah, just barreling towards idiocracy. But yeah, no, with this one, it was just like, I kept trying to keep track because after it started, I was like, okay, I need to call like story number 1, story number 2, story number 3, because I was expecting it just to be like, you see this one, and then it leads into the next one, and that leads into the next one. I wasn't expecting all the like circling back and the continuation and stuff and the way that they would tie into each other. And so that very quickly went out the door. Whereas I feel like with most of the horror anthology movies, it's pretty easy to track like what is just exactly start to finish, anthology scene 1 versus 2 or whatever. So, but one thing I also liked about this one, in addition to just kind of the way it was made, which I thought was really interesting, is I felt like there were some definite influences from other horror movies that were just really well done and worked into this. Like I said in the beginning, that this felt just kind of like a love letter to Halloween horror. And even in like the very opening scene with like the woman taking down the Halloween decorations, it was shot a lot like the original Halloween, as far as, a lot of the like camera from the perspective of someone watching the character while they're behind something or whatever. Yeah. And then where she looks across the street and there's just the guy like standing there creepily looking at her, and then just kind of she's going about taking around the decorations and then gets attacked, and sort of the slasher version of that, and finding the dismembered body and stuff. Like, it felt very influenced by that. And after that scene, I was just like, whatever ride we're about to go on, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Anytime a movie starts, even if it's not horror, but it starts with like Halloween or like trick-or-treating, I'm kind of in for it anyways. Yeah. Especially, I mean, like, I'm a sucker for it. It might as well be like the leaves changing colors, and I might as well be a 80-year-old grandpa, because we all know that they love to watch them leaves turn. Now, it's almost just like a well thought out movie of sorts. It's almost like from me watching it, not doing any reading about this, just from watching the film, it seems like they had the thought to add influences from the past, because you got to be influenced if you want to have a decent film. At least it's something. And then the fact that the way that they were able to kind of tie in the stories and the people's stories together, at the end, not saying that that's like the most complicated storyline, to do, but just like there had to be a lot of pieces put in place to make sure that it worked as well as it did. And so it's almost just like a more elevated, it's almost like they had 30 extra days at the beginning to just add continuity to the movie or something,
So for sure. That definitely shone through a lot. Like, it was a very deliberate thing that I think they pulled off really well. And it never felt unnatural. It felt like it all just kind of like blended together well.
Yeah, I agree.
And it also did quite a bit of like setup for, you'd see one scene and then from the perspective of something else that was happening, then it would like pick that back up later to give you more context or like a different perspective on it. And that just kept it interesting the whole time too.
I think the usage of, it seemed like a lot of the, did you just say this about like the decorations, everything seemed old school?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I think that's very true.
Yeah. Okay. So let me start. Sorry, my mom texted me and I was just trying to shuffle that real quick.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that kind of helped out too was it seemed like a lot of the costumes, well, the story kind of pertained to older Halloween of sorts, but like it seemed like a lot of the costumes and everything that you were seeing were old school, Halloween costumes. One, I assume you can't get, or it might be too expensive to get rights to show like a Pikachu costume or something. But, and back before corporations took over our holidays, and like that's what those costumes look like, and it just added to the vintage atmosphere that I was already kind of feeling. It feels like Halloween a little bit at the beginning, the shots with like you were just talking about, and then it definitely had like a classic movie feel to it, even though it just came out not too long ago. 2007.
It's a liberal use of the word "not too long ago," my friend. We're getting up there.
What is this? Holy shit.
Yeah. It's best not to think about it. So the different kind of sub-stories in this, I feel like had a little bit of a different take on things. Like some were trying to be super scary and suspenseful. Others were a little bit more funny. Others were a little bit more like kind of almost mystery or like Twilight Zone twisty. But I thought that it did a great job of stringing those all together to where the movie still felt coherent. And like the scene or the sub-story or short or whatever at the beginning where the principal kills the kid and is trying to dispose of the body. Mm-hmm. That to me, like tone-wise, felt really different than everything happening with the scene where the kids were in the quarry by the water. Like those just felt like different types of stories to me and what they were going for and everything else. But I thought it all fit because it had that same visual like you were talking about. And also like the story just set it up well that it kind of flowed from one to the other. And so I thought that was cool just because over the course of it, it was like you were experiencing different types of horror. And that kept it interesting too, on top of just the story part.
Yeah. I think that like initially it was almost like you were right on the money. Like when the principal is talking to the kid about candy, like when you first kind of see the principal, like that's pretty creepy. Like all that whole thing that's happening leading up to that. And so what I thought was pretty amazing, if they did this on purpose, was like you see a guy who's so sure and so like angry and so just he's got it a plan. It got under wraps and has this crazy hatred. You see him go from that to being like super nervous about hiding the body to like answering the stuff for his kid, like all that. Like he goes through like 1,000 different emotions just for you to find out that the head they were carving was a person's. Yeah. So he needed help with the eyes. You were thinking pumpkin the whole time. So it's almost like we were being deceived, which I'm okay with, but of some sorts. But it just the acting or just the writing that would take to kind of develop that. At one time, it was definitely like you had Walter White, and then you had Malcolm's dad on, yeah, whatever that show was. Yeah. It was just like back and forth to that. So crazy.
Yeah. And then some of the other ones were much more serious. And then some of them were, a little more lighthearted. And so overall, this was just a fun, like, Halloween movie. You know what I mean? Like it was very much a throw this on October 31st while the trick-or-treaters are coming through, and it's going to enhance the experience.
Yeah. Real quick, the guy at the end, Brian Cox, I can't remember his name. Was he the bus driver? Is that how he played into that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then I was looking at my notes and I was like, that sounds like you made an assumption there. Do you know that for sure? Okay. That makes sense. And then the couple at the end, technically the beginning, was it just because they left? Or like was it just starting something new?
I don't have an explanation for that one. Okay. I think that was just to kind of button it up.
Okay. Okay, just gotcha.
So another thing that stood out to me about this movie was werewolves that behave a lot like vampires from the way that we historically think of them. Mm-hmm. There was that where I thought it was a vampire that had attacked Lori, and then he gets thrown through the air, and then he's like wrapped up in her costume and begging for help, and then you find out the girls are the real vampires. Nope, werewolves. And so it was just like I was so confused on that because I thought this is such like a classic vampire setup,
Were some of them werewolves and some of them vampires, or were they all werewolves?
I still don't know. I thought the guy was dressed up as a vampire, and I thought he did bite somebody towards the beginning. So I don't know. I was very confused.
Oh, it's starting to storm. That's where I was really confused myself. With that specific scene, if I could change something, it would be to understand that, because it's like, wait, weren't you the dude that ate the girl out so hard she started bleeding or something? I just assume. Because it went down when I feel like a creep.
No, I had legit forgotten about that scene. It was pretty intense, but and very bloody. But also, I was kind of confused on like what is the lore that we're embracing here, because it seems like we could go. It seems like as we've progressed through horror movies, like vampires and werewolves, a lot of times are just kind of used interchangeably, and I really don't like that. I would much prefer that they were more developed kind of in their own way. Blame Hollywood.
Yeah, that's true.
But at least at the end of this one, Brian Cox learned the true meaning of Halloween.
Which is always carry more ammo with you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Always have enough candy. And you can never have too many jack-o'-lanterns.
How creepy would it be, though, if you went to shoot someone and pumpkin stuff came out of them?
Yeah, that was really creepy. That was really creepy. Nuts. Yeah. But we are getting dangerously close to the territory of what some of my questions for you are. Oh, so did you have anything else to get into before we went to the question time?
No, I'm pretty happy with the film. I think it was a great pick. It lined up weirdly with what I had been watching, so it was just literally fell right into motion, and I definitely enjoyed the film. Watched it twice. Second time for funsies.
Nice.
Still don't understand half.
Oh, that's what it's a gift that keeps on giving. You got replay value.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll tell you what had some replay value. Was Brian Cox wearing a fake nose in this? I couldn't take my eyes off of it.
Well, I have a theory about this. What if this is the one movie they let him take his mask off?
What if this was his real nose?
This was the real nose, and he wears a prosthetic nose. No, no, I agree. They had it. There was something funky going on, but it was stuff was going. I assume from the bus crash now, but maybe that's why his nose was jacked.
Well, it just felt like a strange choice.
Yeah,
like we can't have this actor look the way the actor looks that we cast for this role.
Yeah.
You know? Just
oh gosh, it did throw me off guard though. Yeah.
I just every time he was on the screen, like it took me a minute to realize that's even who it was. Yeah. And then getting I was just like, wow, okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, Logan Roy's nose has not aged well.
Logan Roy?
Don't worry about it.
You said don't worry about it?
Yeah, real ones.
Oh, I was literally worrying about it. I was chewing my fingernails. Hey, I know we kind of discussed it real quick, but just to put it to fit, what's the movie's deal as far as the subgenre goes? So if we had to title this, would we say anthology horror with a twist of lime?
Well, we talked about in our horror subgenres season about how like there are subgenres that would be like monster, and then you can get more specific. It's like zombie or werewolf, and then there are subgenres that are like slasher. But then there's also kind of like horizontal things that can run across them that are still distinct. And so like found footage, like you can have lots of different types of found footage movies, but found footage horror movies are also a thing. So I think anthology horror, it would kind of fit into the broad category there. But I think that each of the sub-stories almost would be kind of different. I mean, if I had to just narrow it down to one, I think I would say slasher, but I feel like that's narrowing it down too much. I feel like it did a lot of other things too.
I think it's great. Slasher in certain scenes, anthology-ish, vintage feeling. I'm in.
Yeah. So the question that I've been most excited to ask you, other than is this an anthology horror movie, what do you think Sam was? Or I guess another way to ask it would be like, what was his role in all of this?
Well, I had it until you asked what his role was. So I had a fact about Sam.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go for it.
So Sam, pumpkin-headed freak, was created by the director, and it was supposed to symbolize the spirit, quote-unquote, spirit of Halloween. Tricks or treats, basically. So the tricks were the bad things that were happening, and then at the end, he kind of got a treat and then stepped away for a bit, and then trick came back out. To follow up with this, his designs with the burlap mask and orange pajamas is kind of classic Halloween imagery of sorts, and it was originally created for Daughtry's 1996 animated short Season's Greetings.
Interesting.
So now, as far as what's his role for this, he's like the Maury. He's like Maury or Jerry Springer if they were killers.
So Sam was kind of like Art the Clown in that he started off in a short and then made his way up into an anthology-ish. Mm-hmm. Does that mean we got a future Sam-based movie coming on the horizon eventually someday? I can hope.
Well, I could hope. Also, I think it's important for me to tell you this now. I just saw yesterday that they're doing, or that it's out, Blood and Honey 2.
Yeah, I saw that.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
But it would be pretty cool to see a Sam and Art the Clown crossover.
Yeah, like a new school Freddy versus Jason.
I was thinking like Odd Couple, but yeah, Freddy versus Jason makes more sense.
I'd watch both.
Me too. Is it my question for you?
I think so.
Would you recommend it and also watch it again?
Yes and yes. I really enjoyed this movie. I think that it was kind of a perfect Halloween Eve or night of Halloween, Halloween night of Halloween, night of the day.
All Hallows Eve.
Halloween, October 31st after dark.
Got it.
Is a very prime time to watch this movie.
Yeah, it is included in the October monthly movie list. It was added to that for me.
Yeah, very much like a get you in the season type.
Yeah. And for those people not too familiar with it, these are just movies that I watch that remind me of Halloween, or I like to watch during Halloween, or involve Halloween. So it might not be the most scariest. You're not going to see 28 Days Later on my list, because 28 Days Later can be watched 365. Okay?
Yeah. It's my favorite Christmas movie.
Same.
How would you have made this movie better?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Oh, sorry. My bad. I was answering in my head. No. Like you kind of mentioned, character development, but as much as I like the film, there were, and rewatched the film, there were still things that I was confused about, like the wannabe vampire that ended up getting eaten. I think it was because he was acting like he was a vampire or something. I don't know that for sure. I thought like specific things. So I thought like, would it have been, I know that the fact that he was a bus driver kind of came, like you kind of figure that out towards the end, I think, or smarter people probably put it together a lot faster. I didn't, but like the last couple, technically first couple that die, it just been interesting to see how, like, if they could have played a part in that somehow, and maybe they were, characters in line or something like that during the film, but other than that, not too much else. I think that when the dad is digging a grave for the kid that he killed to be buried, that whole piece was a little annoying to me after a while. Like, I didn't think it was funny.
Yeah, I felt like that was the weakest part of the movie.
Yeah. And so, I would have probably done something like that. Was almost like, was this guy like the director's friend or something? Because like there was so many more better scenes, like when they go down into the quarry, like that freaky.
Yeah.
So like I felt like where they had some really good highs, they had some lows, but you can't answer all the questions. Maybe they didn't want all the questions answered. So, but I would say that tie up a couple of the loose ends. I thought that the effects and everything with this movie, I really liked. I wasn't necessarily insulted by like, oh, I'm just being fooled or bamboozled, which I get sometimes because I'm Neanderthal and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the only parts I would really complain about were just kind of the cohesiveness of the story a few times, where I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to think is going on here, because so much of the movie felt very like deliberate and well thought through, that in some of those scenes I'm just like, well, you couldn't have just made me understand that a little bit better, right? Where I could just be in the moment and not trying to figure out what was going on. But yeah.
Well, so my favorite scene was the query scene, like when they're going down in the shaft to take the pumpkins down there after all the pumpkins they borrowed. Like that whole scene did you have a favorite scene or a scene that stuck out, or did you want to elaborate on the quarry scene with me? I'm open to all answers.
Yeah, that is the one. Mm-hmm. That is like the part of this movie that sticks out most clearly in my mind. And the first one that got me was like when she's like telling the story about and it's like the actual flashback of like it happening when the bus was there and then ran off the cliff. And so the bus goes in, and then you just see like those masks floating up in the dark water. That was such good like imagery and such a good way to end that sequence and just leave you feeling completely like hopeless about it.
Yeah.
And then the way that all played out with the twist at the end where they were kind of like playing a joke on the girl by pretending to be the kids who had drowned, but they took it too far. And then like the zombie kids actually do show up. And then the girl just like locks herself in the elevator and leaves them all down there to die. It's just like, damn, that escalated quickly. And you couldn't really blame her.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just like, it was so intense. And the way that played out from a story perspective, like it kind of kept you on your toes the whole time. But it was such a dark concept. And the way it was filmed, I thought was just great. And sound effects, like everything, I thought was really, really well done with that. And that is the part that will always stick in my mind is sort of the main part of this movie.
Yeah, it's like the scene that made me realize that I'm like an old grumpy man now, because like I thought if you can put in that much effort to get those pranks down that well,
right?
Initially,
yeah.
By God, you could be out there doing some amazing stuff. But then I was like, quit being old nerd. Yeah, that was definitely creepy. I think seeing the kids trick or treat at the end, like all kind of wet, damp and wet and everything too, was pretty gnarly. Yeah. I thought how Sam could come in and out of reality, I guess. Like he almost got shot early on and he went out of whatever vision Brian was seeing at the end, but I thought that was good. And then just the tying it all together. I literally after watching this movie, I legit said out loud, "That's a nice flick," and I was watching it by myself. So that should tell you what I think of this film.
Yeah, I also so the close second for me on scenes was towards the end when Sam is tormenting Brian Cox. And then there's that shot kind of like looking up and you see him come climbing down the stairs and across the ceiling.
Yeah.
That was just such a creepy, like well done scene that almost just like makes your stomach drop and you just feel creepy and you look at your own ceiling. Like I thought that was really, really good. And that was just such a quick thing, it really landed, I thought.
So when you were watching this and it was the principal's scene, like when he's going into the house, you catch the Brian Cox getting tackled in the background?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I saw that when it was happening the first time, and I thought, I don't know if that's supposed to be funny or part of this, like, or like because we'd seen
good catch.
The couple at the beginning, and so then at the end when I realized like we saw the scene where he was being buried and I was like, oh, it's happened at the same time. And then like it clicked then where I was like, oh shoot, like you're about to see that. I thought it was sooner time wise. But then you see him walk up and you think that he's doing okay at that point. Brian Cox, you think that he might be able to,
right?
I think he just had just shot him. I can't remember. And then I remember, oh shit, he gets tackled and literally boom comes across and gets tackled. And you're like, oh damn, that's a good catch. Yeah.
Well done. But yeah, man, overall, I really, really enjoyed this one. I look forward to watching it again and I would recommend it to people. And I honestly don't understand how this isn't a bigger movie.
Yeah, agreed. Who's keeping the secrets out there? Not us. Not us. Don't bring us into this.
Spreading the gospel.
Yeah, don't even think about it.
Can I get a trick or treat?
Amen, brother.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. So I totally thought it was going to be a pirate movie.
Wait a minute. This wasn't a pirate movie?
Did you pirate this movie?
Oh, I did. Are you the FBI?
No, they're hot on my trail for the 2 copies of Terra Firma I bought years ago. But yeah, this one. So